Hello everyone, welcome to Macklin Sleeps. My name is Macklin and today I will be your narrator. We will be learning a little more about Aragorn from the Lord of the Rings. I hope that you can enjoy this as you continue on with your day, either falling asleep or studying, and you can learn something about Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, and specifically Aragorn, the King of Gondor. First, the Wandering King. Aragorn's hidden years before the events of the War of the Ring. Before the great wars of the Third Age, before the sword was reforged, and long before the crown of Gondor found its rightful brow, there was only a boy. Imagine a quiet valley, tucked away in the deep folds of the misty mountains. The air is always cool here, thick with the scent of pine, damp stone, and ancient memories. This is Rivendell, the last homely house east of the sea, and in this sanctuary of peace, a young child walks the mossy pathways, entirely unaware of the heavy destiny resting upon his shoulders. The year is 2933 of the Third Age in Middle-earth. A great tragedy has struck the line of the Isildur. Arathorn, the chieftain of the Dunedain, has fallen to an orc's arrow. He leaves behind a widow, Gilrain, and an infant son who is only 2 years old. Fearing that the Dark Lord's servants will hunt down their final heir of the ancient kings, Gilrain flees to Rivendell, and under the protective shadow of Elrond the half-elven boy's true identity is locked away in deepest secrecy. To the world, and even to himself, he is not Aragorn. He is Estel. In the beautiful Sindarin tongue of the elves, Estel means hope. For nearly 20 years, Estel grows up in the house of Elrond, as if he were Elrond's own son. He learns the gentle songs of the Eldar, the lore of ancient kingdoms, and the art of healing with the soft-leaved kingsfoil plant. He runs through the starlit woods with Elrond's twin sons, Elladan and Elrohir, learning to move through the forest without making a sound, as silent as the mist rising off the river. But he does not know who he is. He does not know that the blood of the great kings of Númenor runs thick and strong through his veins. He only knows the warmth of the library, the comforting rush of the waterfalls, and the steady, protective presence of his foster father. To quote Elrond to Aragorn, a great doom awaits you, either to rise above the height of all your fathers, or to fall into darkness. As the years pass like leaves falling into a quiet stream, Estel, Aragorn, grows into a fair and noble youth, early come to his full manhood. At the age of 20, having proven his courage in deeds of daring alongside Elrond's sons, his foster father decides it is finally time to lift the veil of secrecy. Elrond calls the young man to his private chamber. The air is quiet, save for the crackle of a dying hearth and the steady patter of rain against the high arching windows. It is here that Aragorn learns his true name. Aragorn, the son of Arathorn. He is the 39th heir of Isildur, in a direct, unbroken line. He is the rightful chieftain of the Dunedain, the scattered nomadic rangers of the north. To mark this revelation, Elrond places 2 ancient heirlooms into his hands. First, the Ring of Barahir, an emerald-eyed token of friendship, dating back to the First Age, long before the world was broken. Second, he is shown the shards of Narsil, the shattered pieces of the legendary sword that his ancestor used to cut the One Ring from the finger of Sauron. The weight of his inheritance is staggering. In a single evening, the quiet, scholarly youth of Rivendell is transformed into a king in exile, a man burdened with a task that seems utterly impossible, to someday reclaim a fallen throne and stand against the gathering shadows of the East. Yet, destiny has a way of softening its heavy blows. The very next day, walking through the gardens of Rivendell at sunset, Aragorn beholds a vision of breathtaking beauty. Under the silver birches stands Arwen Undamyan, the daughter of Elrond. Returned from her mother's homeland in Lothlorien, to Aragorn she appears as the morning star itself. In that quiet, fated encounter, his heart is given to her forever. But their love is not easily won. Elrond, seeing the silent promise in Aragorn's eyes, warns him gently but firmly. Aragorn must bind no woman to him in troth until he is found worthy, until he has become the king of both Arnor and Gondor. And so, with a heart full of hope, longing, and a new fiery resolve of love, Aragorn bids farewell to the valley of his childhood. He steps out of the sanctuary of Rivendell and disappears into the vast, unforgiving wild. For nearly 30 years, Aragorn wanders the wide lands of Middle-earth, moving like a ghost through kingdoms that do not know his face. He joins the scattered remnants of his own people, the Rangers of the North. He lives in the wind-swept hills, sleeping on the damp earth under the cold stars, learning the harsh realities of survival. He becomes a master of the wilderness, a hunter, a tracker, and a silent guardian. During these wanderings, he meets Gandalf the Grey. The wise old wizard quickly recognizes the rare nobility and sharp mind of the young heir. A deep, unbreakable friendship is forged between them. Together they travel through perilous valleys and dark forests, sharing quiet campfires and exchanging the deep lore of the world. From Gandalf, Aragorn learns the movements of the enemy and the delicate threads of fate that bind Middle-earth. But Aragorn does not confine his service to the north. Seeking to learn the hearts of men and to test his own strength, he travels far to the south under an assumed name, Thorongil, the Eagle of the Star. He does not boast of his royal blood. Instead, he serves in disguise, offering his sword and his wisdom to the great lords of man. In Rohan, he rides alongside King Thengel, father of Theoden. He becomes a trusted captain, learning the fierce and beautiful culture of the Horse Lords, his voice joining theirs in the thundering cavalry charges across the Golden Plains. And in Gondor, he serves Ecthelium II, the ruling steward and father of Denethor. Thorongil becomes a legendary figure among the soldiers of Minas Tirith. He is wise, valiant, and beloved by the people, who often compare him to a king of old. In a daring midnight raid, Thorongil, Aragorn, leads a small fleet to the dark waters of Umbar. Under the cover of a storm, he burns the ships of the Black Númenóreans, defeating Gondor's ancient enemies and securing the southern coasts. Yet, after his brilliant victory, when the people of Gondor look to crown him with laurels, Thorongil simply vanishes. He declines all honors, takes a small boat across the river, and disappears once more into the shadow of the mountains. He knows his time has not yet come. He is not ready to claim the throne of his fathers. The shadow of the ring still hangs over the world. After his long years of service in the south, Aragorn returns to the quiet, rainy landscape of the north. He assumes his final, most enduring disguise, Strider. To the simple folk of Bree and the quiet hobbits of the Shire, he is merely a weather-worn, suspicious vagabond. They see a tall, lean man with a shaggy head of dark hair, flecked with gray. He sits in the dark corners of the taverns, clad in travel-stained green and brown, his keen gray eyes watching the room from beneath the deeply pulled hood. They do not know that his rugged wanderer, whom they treat with quiet distrust, is the shield that keeps their peaceful lives safe from the horrors of the wide world. For decades, Strider and his silent rangers keep a sleepless watch over the borders of the Shire, guarding its peaceful green hills from the growing malice of Sauron. He expects no thank yous, no songs of praise, and no coin. He does it out of a quiet, profound duty to the land and to the future he hopes to build. As the rain continues to fall gently outside, we leave Aragorn here, standing on a lonely, wind-swept ridge in the dark, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of his broken sword, and his eyes searching the eastern horizon. He is a king without a crown, a warrior without a home, waiting patiently for the spark that will ignite his destiny. Book 1. The Fellowship of the Ring. Our story shifts now to a dark and stormy night in the village of Bree. Inside the warm, noisy common room of the Prancing Pony, the air is thick with the scent of pipeweed, roasted meats, and wet cloaks. And 4 small hobbits sit huddled at a quarter table, feeling very small and very far from home. In the dimmest corner of the room, sitting entirely alone, is a shadow. This is Strider, as we first meet him in the books. He watches them, and he has been waiting for them. When Frodo Baggins accidentally slips the one ring onto his finger, vanishing before the stunned tavern crowd, it is Strider who reacts first. He drags Frodo into a private parlor. In the quiet of that room, with the rain lashing against the glass, the ranger reveals his true nature, not as an enemy, but as their only hope of survival. He warns them of the Black Riders, the ring wraiths who are already hunting them through the storm. In this moment, we see the beginning of Aragorn's transition. For decades, he has kept his distance from the affairs of the wide world, guarding it from the shadows. But now the threat is at his doorstep. He must step into the light, and he agrees to guide the hobbits through the trackless wild, leading them toward the safety of Rivendell. On the wind-swept ruins of Weathertop, the terror of the shadow catches up to them. 5 of the 9 attack their camp in the dead of the night. Though Aragorn fights bravely, wielding a burning branch and his sword to drive the wraiths back into the dark, Frodo is grievously wounded by a Morgul blade. Here, Aragorn's deep training in elven lore shines through. He does not just fight, he heals. He searches the dark hillsides in the pouring rain until he finds the modest leaves of Athelas. Crushing the leaves, he bathes Frodo's wound, slowing the poison that threatens to drag the young hobbit into the spirit world. It is a desperate race against time, but Aragorn's strength and knowledge carry them to the safety of the ford of Bruinen, and finally back to the sanctuary of his childhood home. In Rivendell, the sanctuary of his youth, Aragorn is faced with his greatest trial yet, the decision to stop running from his heritage. During the Council of Elrond, the true nature of the quest is laid bare. The One Ring must be destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom. As representatives of the free peoples step forward to form the Fellowship, Aragorn stands up. He looks at the small, trembling Frodo Baggins, who has volunteered to carry this terrible burden, and he makes a solemn vow. If my life or death I can protect you, I will. You have my sword. For Aragorn, this is not a simple promise. It is the moment he accepts that he can no longer run from his destiny and remain a wanderer of the shadows. To protect Frodo, he must accept his lineage as a king. The shattered pieces of Narsil are brought forth from the treasury. The elven smiths of Rivendell forge the blade anew. It is a reborn as Andúril, the flame of the west, shining with the cold light of the sun and moon. When Aragorn girds the sword at his side, he is no longer just Strider the Ranger. He is the heir of Elendil, stepping onto a path that must lead either to the throne of Gondor or to his utter destruction. As the Fellowship sets out from Rivendell under a gray and rainy winter sky, Aragorn walks beside Gandalf. He is the second in command, a silent pillar of strength, always watching the high ridges for the signs of the enemy. He supports the hobbits when their feet grow weary, carries them through the deep snowdrifts of the mountain pass of Caradhras, and stands as a shield between them and the cold wind. When the mountain pass of Caradhras turns them away due to the snow, the journey leads the Fellowship deep into the black, silent depths of the mines of Moria. Under the roots of the mountains, where the air is heavy and damp with the dust of forgotten ages, Aragorn's resolve is tested in fire. When the ancient demon, the Balrog, rises from the abyss, Gandalf stands alone on the bridge of Khazad-dûm to face it. Aragorn watches in horror as the bridge shatters, and his beloved friend and mentor is dragged down into the dark chasm. In that single, shattering moment, the world changes. The guide, the protector, and the leader of the quest is gone. The Fellowship is broken, weeping and leaderless on the cold rocks outside the mountain gate. This is a pivotal turning point for Aragorn. He has spent his entire life avoiding leadership, doubting his own strength and fearing that the weakness of his ancestors run in his blood. But as he looks at the devastated faces of the remaining companions, he realizes there is no one else. He must lead. With a voice clear and commanding, yet filled with gentle urgency, he rouses them. He forces them to dry their tears and keep moving, knowing that the orcs of Moria will soon be hot on their heels. He leads them down into the golden wood of Lothlorien, seeking the comfort of the Lady Galadriel. In Lothlorien, under the eternal autumn leaves, Aragorn finds a brief moment of peace. He confronts his own grief and his deepest fears. Galadriel speaks to him of his destiny, reminding him that the hope of men rests upon his shoulders. When they depart down the great river Anduin, she gifts him a beautiful green stone, the Elessar, or Elf Stone, a token of royalty and a symbol of the dawn of a new age. The final days of the Fellowship are marked by a growing, suffocating tension. As they camp at the lawn of Parth Galen, near the thunderous falls of Rauros, the shadow of the ring begins to poison the mind of Boromir. Aragorn watches his companion closely, his heart heavy with the knowledge that the Fellowship cannot hold together much longer. On the slopes of Amon Hen, the crisis reaches its peak. Frodo, realizing the ring is destroying his friends, slips away to go to Mordor alone. At the same time, a massive hunting party of Uruk-hai attacks their camp, and Aragorn is faced with an agonizing choice. Should he follow Frodo and the ring to the east, or should he rush to the aid of the other hobbits and Boromir? He chooses duty. He chooses loyalty. He runs towards the sound of the Horn of Gondor. But he arrives too late to save Boromir, who lies pierced by many arrows beneath a great tree. In his final moments, Boromir confesses his failure to Aragorn, weeping for his weakness. But Aragorn does not condemn him. Kneeling in the damp leaves, he takes Boromir's hand and promises him that Minas Tirith shall not fall. Boromir looks up at him, seeing at last the true majesty of his leader, and says, "I would have followed you, my brother, my captain, my king." With Boromir's death, the Fellowship is officially severed. Frodo and Sam have crossed the river, heading toward Mordor. Merry and Pippin have been captured by the orcs, and Aragorn stands with Gimli, son of Gloin, and the elf. With Boromir's death, Aragorn stands by the water's edge, the rain starting to fall softly once more. Reflecting on his options, he could follow Frodo, but he knows his presence would only draw the eye of the enemy to the ring-bearer. Instead, he makes a decision of pure, selfless heroism. He elects to leave the ring to its fate, trusting in Frodo's quiet strength. He returns to Legolas and Gimli, his eyes burning with a fierce, untamed light. They will hunt the orcs. They will run across the plains of Rohan day and night to rescue the two small hobbits who were entrusted to their care. In this moment, the transformation is complete. The Doubtful Ranger has fully embraced his role as a leader, a protector, and a king. He does not need a crown to prove it. His nobility is written in his choices, his loyalty, and his relentless pursuit of hope in a darkening world. The journey does... In the book 2 of the Two Towers of the Lord of the Rings, the journey does not stop for grief. On the grassy plains of Rohan, under a vast gray sky, 3 figures run. They run through the damp morning mists, through the heat of the midday sun, and into the cool, rain-slicked nights. At their head is Aragorn. For 4 days and 80 leagues, he leads Legolas and Gimli across the rocky downs of the Rittermark. He is a ranger of the north, and here his legendary tracking skills are pushed to their absolute limits. He does not sleep. He bends to the earth, pressing his ear to the cold ground, listening to the distant rhythmic thud of orc boots. He finds a single leaf of Lothlorien, dropped intentionally by Pippin in the mud, and finds it a tiny beacon of hope in the desolate lands. This chase is more than a rescue mission. It is a testament to Aragorn's relentless devotion. He has surrendered the quest of the ring to Frodo's silent steps. He, choosing instead to honor his promise to protect the helpless, he does not run for glory, nor for a crown, but for the lives of 2 small hobbits who looked to him for safety. When they reach the eaves of the ancient Fangorn forest, they do not find the orcs, but rather a miracle. Standing among the ancient moss-draped trees, bathed in a soft white light, is a figure they thought lost to the shadow. Gandalf has returned, reborn as Gandalf the White. The reunion is quiet, sealed with a deep, unspoken understanding. The wizard has returned to guide the free world, but he does not take the mantle of leadership back from Aragorn. Instead, he points the path forward. They must ride to Edoras, to the golden hall of Medesul, where King Theoden sits trapped in a prison of his own mind, poisoned by the whispers of Grima Wormtongue. Arriving at Edoras, Aragorn steps into a kingdom on the brink of ruin. The air inside the great hall is heavy and stale, smelling of decay and forgotten honor. Here we see Aragorn's growing diplomacy and respect for ancient laws. When asked to lay down his weapons at the door, he hesitates to part with Andúril, the blade of Elendil. Yet, to preserve peace and show respect to the alien king, he complies, setting the legendary sword aside with a quiet reverence. Once Gandalf frees Theoden from the dark spell of Saruman, Aragorn does not force his own counsel upon the restored king. He stands a supportive brother in arms. He understands the heavy burden of leadership all too well. And when Theoden decides to withdraw his people to the mountain fortress of Helm's Deep, Aragorn rides with them, protecting the caravan of refugees from the deadly raids of Saruman's wolf riders. It is during this perilous journey that Eowyn, the shield maiden of Rohan, looks upon Aragorn. She sees him as a figure of myth, tall, lordly, yet gentle and understanding. He is drawn to his strength, but Aragorn, carrying the memory of Arwen in his heart, like an eternal flame, must gently steer her away from a love that can never be. He treats her not with cold rejection, but with the profound respect due to a warrior and a noble woman. Recognizing the fierce spirit trapped within her domestic cage. The night of the Battle of Helm's Deep is a symphony of thunder, steel, and endless rain. 10,000 Uruk-hai swarm the valley, their armor gleaming in the flash of lightning. Against them stand only a few hundred old men and young boys, their hands trembling on their bows and swords. Aragorn stands among them upon the high stone walls of the Hornburg. The wind whips his dark hair, and the rain washes the grime from his face. In this desperate hour, he is the rock upon which the defense is built. He speaks words of courage to the terrified soldiers, his voice carrying over the roar of the storm. He fights alongside Legolas and Gimli, his sword Andúril flashing like a cold fire in the dark. And when the outer wall is breached by Saruman's devilry, Aragorn does not retreat. He leads a daring countercharge at the gate, leaping into the fray with a small band of men to buy time for the defenses to be rebuilt. And as the dawn draws near, and the fortress is on the verge of falling, Aragorn remembers a promise. He stands beside King Theoden in the darkened keep. The king is weary, ready to meet his end, but Aragorn rouses him one last time. "Ride out with me," Aragorn urges. "Ride out and meet them." And with a great blast of the horn of Helm Hammerhand, the gates are thrown open. Aragorn and Theoden ride headlong into the host of the enemy, just as the first rays of the morning sun break over the eastern hills. The light catches the white staff of Gandalf, who arrives at the head of the Erickenbrand's riders. The shadow is broken, the siege is lifted, and Aragorn's name is sung in the halls of Rohan as a savior of the realm. With the victory of Helm's Deep behind them, the true war begins. In the third book, The Return of the King. The red eye of Sauron turns its full malicious gaze towards Minas Tirith, the white city of Gondor. To save the city, Aragorn must make the most terrifying choice of his life. He must walk the paths of the dead. Deep within the Dwimorberg mountain lies a dark, subterranean door. Beyond it dwell the spirits of Oathbreakers, men who, in the Second Age, swore an oath to Isildur during the fight against Sauron, but betrayed him when the hour of need came. And for their cowardice they were cursed to haunt the caverns, unable to find rest until their oath was fulfilled. No living man has ever entered this door and returned. Yet, Aragorn knows that Gondor's multiple armies are not enough to defeat the massive fleets of the corsairs of Umbar sailing up the river. He must demand the allegiance of the dead. Accompanied only by Legolas and Gimli and a small company of his loyal northern rangers, Aragorn steps into the freezing gloom of the mountain. The air is thick with the whispers of unquiet spirits, their cold fingers brushing against their skin in the dark. Reaching the heart of the cavern, Aragorn stands before the King of the Dead. He does not speak as a humble traveler, nor as a desperate warrior. He draws Andúril, the sword of the king, and holds it high. The blade glows with a pale, commanding light of fire. "I call upon you to fulfill your oaths," Aragorn declares, his voice echoing through the stone halls. "Fight for me, and I will release you from this death in life. I am Elisar, Isildur's heir." Recognizing the ancient majesty and the sword that was broken, the King of the Dead bows, and the ghostly army rises, a pale tide of spectral warriors ready to follow the true King of Gondor into the light of day. As Minas Tirith starts to burn, the great river is choked with the black-sailed ships of the corsairs, and the defenders of the White City believe their doom has arrived. But as the first ships berth at the Harlon docks, it is not the enemy that steps ashore. It is Aragorn, and his army of the dead, and his army of the southern kingdoms of Gondor. He leaps from the deck, unfurling the great standard woven for him in secret by Arwen, the white tree of Gondor, and the 7 stars of Elendil shining in the sun. Beside him pours the terrifying and unstoppable torrent of the dead. They sweep across the Pelennor fields like a cold wind, breaking the armies of Mordor and lifting the siege of the city. In the aftermath of the battle, the fields are littered with the fallen. Aragorn does not enter the city as a conquering hero. He is remembered as a healer. He enters Minas Tirith in secret, cloaked in his ranger's garb, and makes his way to the houses of healing. There he finds Faramir, Éowyn, and the young hobbit Merry, all slipping away under the deadly touch of the black breath of the Nazgûl and the Witch King. Aragorn calls for Athelas. He crushes the leaves in hot water, and the room is filled with the fresh scent of pine and morning dew. He lays his hands upon their brows, fighting a silent, spiritual battle against the darkness. By morning, they awaken. The people of the city whisper of the ancient prophecy. The hands of the king are the hands of a healer, and so shall the rightful king be known. Yet still, Aragorn refuses the crown, as the war is not yet won. And so the final hour has come. The forces of Mordor are vast, and Frodo is stumbling through the barren wastes of Mount Doom, his strength failing under the weight of the ring. And Aragorn realizes that the only way to give Frodo a chance to complete his quest is to draw the Eye of Sauron away from the mountain. He must commit a final, desperate act of self-sacrifice. He will march the remaining forces of the West directly to the Black Gate of Mordor. They stand before the massive iron doors, a small, weary host, surrounded by hundreds of thousands of orcs, trolls, and dark men. The wind is howling, carrying the ash of the burning mountains. But the black gate swings open, and the mouth of Sauron rides forth, presenting the mithril shirt of Frodo, claiming the halfling is captured and the quest has failed, and the hearts of the soldiers sink into utter despair. But Aragorn does not break. He steps forward, his face set like carved stone, and with a single swift stroke of Andúril, he silences the messenger of lies. He turns to his men, his voice ringing across the desolate plain. A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But this is not this day. An hour of wolves and shattered shields, when the age of men comes crashing down. But it is not this day. This day we fight. He draws his sword, looking one last time toward the dark horizon where Frodo walks, and he whispers, "For Frodo." And with those words, the King of Gondor is the first to charge headlong into the overwhelming tide of the enemy. Their final stand at the Black Gate is not in vain, as shortly after the battle begins, the forces of darkness are dispersed, as Frodo has cast the ring in with Gollum into the fires of Mount Doom. And so Aragorn knows that the shadow has fallen. The ring has been consumed by fire, and the dark tower of Barad-dûr has crumbled into the dust. The great war is over, and the earth breathes a long, cool sigh of relief. And on a bright, clear morning, in the city of Minas Tirith, gleaming like silver under the summer sun, the streets are filled with music. The banners of the white tree flutter in the warm breeze, and thousands of voices rise in a joyful chorus. Aragorn stands upon the court of the fountain, before the high doors of the citadel. He is clad in mail of silver and black, with a long cloak of dark green. He is no longer Strider the Ranger, nor Thorongil the Wanderer. He is Aragorn, the King. Gandalf steps forward, holding the ancient silver crown of Gondor. He places it upon Aragorn's head, saying, "Now come the days of the King, and may they be blessed while the thrones of the Valar endure." Aragorn turns to face his people. He looks upon the vast crowd, but his eyes search for those who made this day possible. He walks down the steps to where 4 small hobbits stand, feeling out of place among the great lords and ladies. As they begin to bow to him, Aragorn stops them and says, "My friends, you bow to no one." And the King of the West kneels before the hobbits, followed by every lord, lady, soldier, and citizen of the realm, honoring the small hands that saved the world. For 120 years, King Elessar, Aragorn, rules over the reunited kingdom of Arnor and Gondor. His reign is an age of peace, restoration, and healing. He rebuilds the ruined cities of his ancestors, plants new forests, and ensures that the simple, quiet lives of the Shire remain undisturbed by the worries of the outer world. He rules not with an iron fist, but with the wisdom of a man who has lived among the common folk. Who has slept on the bare earth, and who knows the value of a quiet evening by the hearth. Beside him sits Queen Arwen, her beauty undimmed by the passing of years. Together they bring a new line of kings into the world, ensuring that the blood of elves and men remains bound together forever. Aragorn never forgets his years as a ranger. Even in his old age, when his dark hair has turned entirely to silver, he often walks the quiet paths of the forest, listening to the rain falling on the leaves, remembering the cold nights under the stars, the campfires with Gandalf, and the long watch in the north. The year is 120 of the Fourth Age, the Age of Men, and Aragorn feels the cold hand of time finally catching up to him. The extraordinarily long life of the last great Númenórean king is drawing to its natural close. He enters the House of the Kings in the silent city of the dead. He lies down upon a long bed of stone, prepared for his final sleep. Arwen stands beside him, her heart breaking with the sorrow of mortality, realizing at last the bitter sweetness of the choice she made so long ago. Aragorn looks up at her, his gray eyes still full of the gentle love that began in the starlit gardens of Rivendell. "In sorrow we must go," he whispers to her. but not in despair. Behold, we are not bound forever to the circles of the world, and beyond them is more than memory. Farewell, my beloved. He takes Arwen's hand, closes his eyes, and falls into a deep and dreamless sleep. A great majesty and peace rest upon his face, untouched by the passage of time. And so we leave the king. The rain outside continues to fall, soft and steady, washing over the green hills of the Shire, the golden plains of Rohan, and the high stone towers of Gondor. It is a quiet world, safe, peaceful, and free, all because the lonely wanderer chose to step out of the shadows and embrace his destiny. Thank you for listening to this script of Aragorn from the Lord of the Rings. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope we meet again.